Hello and welcome back to Exam Prep Solutions. In today's video, we're going to be tackling some engineering ethics problems. I've got 3 of them here. That's about the max you'll probably see on the exam, as it is not one of the more highly covered topics. If you're looking for a framework, the 5 steps to solving any FE exam problem, you can find that for free, that guide in the description down below. Now let's launch into the practice problems here. Okay, so you can see the 3 problems for engineering ethics. I have a piece of the reference manual on in ethics and professional practice, code of ethics. It goes longer than that, so open up your FE manuals as well and look at that section there. A lot of these problems, though, are very intuitive and straightforward, and as long as you keep public safety and discretion in place in your mind when you think about these problems, you should be able to get them right. They're usually pretty intuitive, and the answer is usually fairly clear, but we're going to practice a few of them because that's a pretty good thing to do. So let's start with problem 1, conflict of interest. And if you search code of ethics or ethics anywhere in your FE reference manual, this section should pop up, as well as a lot of the model rules there. So if you do get a more complex problem, that's where I would search. So an engineer is reviewing bids for a municipal project. One of the bidding contractors is owned by the engineer's sibling. The engineer believes the contractor is highly qualified. What is the most appropriate action? So we have recommend the contractor if they are the lowest bidder, disclose the relationship and recuse from the decision, recommend the contractor, but disclose after selection, do nothing if the engineer remains objective. Okay, so from the outset here, an engineer is reviewing bids for a municipal project. One of the bidding contractors is owned by the engineer's sibling. So already there is a conflict of interest. If you read the model rules, or you've ever taken any code of ethics exams or read through these things, you know that disclosing the relationships is going to be very, very important. And in the situation of a bid, recusing from the decision is probably the best case. Any of these other actions, for example, recommend the contractor if they are the lowest bidder, that still doesn't disclose the conflict of interest. Recommend the contractor but disclose after selection, that's clearly showing bias there in that situation. Do nothing if the engineer remains objective. Again, you still need to disclose that conflict of interest. So answer B is going to be correct in this case. Now, that does not mean in all situations you have to disclose everything you know about this situation, or that there's never gray areas when it comes to code of ethics, or there's never areas where discretion needs to be used. But when it comes to conflicts of interest like this, you do need to disclose those things. So we'll go with answer B here on problem 1. Problem 2, public safety versus employer. So we've got public safety on this one. An engineer discovers a design flaw in a structure that could pose a safety risk. The employer instructs the engineer not to report it to avoid delays. What should the engineer do? I hope you all get this problem fairly quickly. Follow employer instructions, ignore the issue unless failure occurs, report the concern to appropriate authorities, document internally, and take no further action. So when public safety is in play, you want to take the course of action that is going to greatly benefit, or at most greatly benefit, public safety in that case, because that is your duty as a professional engineer. Engineers considered to be a profession rather than occupation, and it must be done in the interest of the public. So follow employer instructions. Well, there's a design flaw that could pose a safety risk. So just following your employer does not recuse you of all responsibility. Ignore the issue unless failure occurs. That's how we get terrible things happening to the public. So you can't just straight up ignore the issue. Report the concern to the appropriate authorities, especially since the employer is instructing you not to report it. Doesn't mean you still shouldn't report it to the proper authorities. So answer C is correct. Document internally and take no further action. That would just make things worse for you, because you are documenting that there is a problem, but then doing nothing about it and essentially making yourself responsible. You knew that there was something bad. There's one thing if no one is aware of the design flaw and something bad happens, but if you're actually aware of it and do nothing, that makes your responsibility even worse. So in the case of public safety, you need to report that concern to the appropriate authorities. Problem 3, practicing outside competence, another very common category on the exam. An engineer with experience in transportation engineering is asked to design a complex geotechnical foundation system without prior experience. What is the most appropriate action? So if you've read the model rules, and especially if you've applied for your PE like I have, you have to take an ethics exam there as well. It's very important that you practice in your area of competency. Now, it doesn't mean that you can only do or be involved in projects in your area of competency, or else you can never learn and gain more experience. But what's really important is the supervision aspect here. So what's the most appropriate action? Accept the work and learn as needed. Accept the work if supervised by a geotechnical engineer. Decline the work entirely or perform the work using standard references. Two of these are kind of close. One is not good and one is correct. So first off here, especially when it comes to these problems, you want to use a process of elimination to find out which ones are clearly not the answer, which ones are clearly outside the scope of the answer, and then narrowing it to a couple to find the most reasonable one. Decline the work entirely. You don't have to decline the work entirely. There is another option, a middle option. So it's not going to be answer C. So you have A, B, and D. Perform the work using standard references, maybe, and answer A, accept the work and learn as needed. That's not really going to work as well. B, accept the work if supervised by a geotechnical engineer. That is the correct answer. So you need to take on projects in your area of competency. If it's not your area of competency, if you can be supervised by someone whose area of competency is that thing, like a geotechnical engineer, and you have someone in that company, that is the most appropriate form of action. Because like I said, how would you ever get competent in something if you couldn't be supervised by someone who was competent in that field? So for problem 3, practicing outside competency, it's going to be answer B. And you can look up aspects of these things in the model rules, but I remember on my exam, I didn't need to ever really look up the rules. Most of them were pretty straightforward, and you shouldn't have too much of a problem worrying about tricky answers on this one. Just narrow it to the 2 most plausible. If you need to, check with the code of ethics rules, and you should be able to solve these. But remember, conflict of interest, public safety, and then questions about area of competency. Remember to approach things from you want to do work within your area of competency, but there are exceptions if you have supervision or people helping you with the project or someone else is stamping it. That can be okay. When it comes to public safety, you need to take action for public safety. If there's issues, if there's something that's happening that's bad, you need to be on that and do it for the good of the public. And conflict of interests need to be disclosed. In all situations, this is a bid, for instance, but not in all situations of a conflict of interest do people need to be recused. But in terms of reviewing bids for a project, you do need to disclose that relationship and recuse yourself from that decision. So those are 3 problems covering ethics and professional practice. If you have any questions, leave it in a comment down below. Pick up my 5 steps to solving any FE exam problem. Pick up my guide, the 90-day study plan to passing your FE exam. You can find those both in the description down below. And if you're looking for direct help, you can contact me in my email there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.